If you, like, stop pouring oil into a car engine, the friction builds up almost immediately.
Oh, yeah, instantly.
Right? The metal parts just grind together, the temperature spikes, and I mean, within minutes, the entire system catastrophically fails.
Complete breakdown.
Exactly. Because input equals output, right? If the fuel isn't provided externally, the machine dies. And for decades, we have essentially assumed that human biology works on that exact same mechanical logic.
Especially when it comes to dietary fat.
Yes, especially fat. We've been told that if we don't ingest enough of it, our cellular machinery will just, grind to a halt.
Hmm.
But what if your body isn't a passive mechanical engine at all?
Which is such a wild thing to consider.
Right. What if, instead, it's this highly generative alchemy lab that can literally spin fat out of thin air?
It's a radical shift in perspective because we are so accustomed to viewing our biology as this simple ledger of deposits and withdrawals.
Yeah, like a bank account.
Exactly like a bank account,
Yeah.
where we feel like we have to micromanage every single macronutrient or else, the system collapses.
Which is exactly why we are jumping into this today. Because if you're listening to this and you love those aha moments, those paradigm-shifting ideas that completely upend how you view your own existence, you are totally in the right place.
We've got a really fascinating one today.
We really do. We are looking at a single, incredibly provocative source text today. It's an article titled The Internal Lipid Economy, Redefining Fat as Dietary Requirement.
Just the title alone is great.
Right. And our mission in this deep dive is to examine the deeply ingrained nutritional dogma that dietary fat is an absolute non-negotiable survival necessity.
We want to see if the physiological reality actually matches the cultural narrative we've all been sold.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. And just to set the tone for you listening, we're not going to give you a dry textbook reading today.
Absolutely not.
You already know the basics of nutrition, so we want to bypass the surface-level definitions and dive deep into the actual mechanisms, the how and the why.
Because when you look under the hood of human metabolism, the implications are just profound.
They really are.
What's fascinating here is the core tension established right from the jump in this article. The text highlights a fundamental philosophical difference in how we approach physiology.
How so?
Well, it's the difference between viewing the human body as a passive recipient of external nutrients versus viewing it as an active, living, generative system.
Generative system. I
Like that, right? Because a generative system doesn't just sit around waiting for supplies to arrive. It actively assesses what it has on hand and manufactures exactly what it needs to survive.
Okay, right. And if we accept that the body is actively generating its own resources, I mean, the natural first question is how?
Yeah, how does it do it?
Like, how on earth does it generate something as structurally complex and, energy dense as fat from non-fat sources?
So to understand the mechanics of that, we first have to acknowledge the stakes here. The body absolutely does need fat to function.
Right, we're not saying fat is bad.
No, not at all. We are not debating that fat itself is essential. It is structurally necessary for cellular membrane integrity. It's required for the myelin sheath formation that insulates your nervous system. It is the foundational building block for steroid hormone synthesis.
And absorbing fat-soluble vitamins, right?
Exactly. Vitamins A, D, E, K. These are genuine, non-negotiable physiological needs.
Wait, hold on a second, though.
Yeah.
If these components are absolutely crucial for hormone synthesis and cell integrity, which, I mean, they undeniably are,
Right.
are we playing a dangerous game by assuming the body can just handle the supply chain entirely on its own without us consciously eating fats?
Well, it feels dangerous because we are so conditioned by that machine metaphor we talked about earlier.
The car engine.
Exactly. We think, if I don't eat the fat, my cells will literally fall apart. But the critical question is not whether fat is needed.
Okay.
It's where that fat must originate.
Oh, I see.
The assumption that it must come from the food on your plate is exactly where the dominant paradigm breaks down, because it completely ignores the staggering biochemical capacity of the liver.
The liver. Always doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
Yeah, truly the unsung hero. The liver executes this process called de novo lipogenesis,
De novo lipogenesis.
which literally means making new fat from nothing.
Wow. From nothing.
Well, it isn't magic, right? It's highly efficient biochemistry. When you consume an excess of non-fat substrates, so primarily carbohydrates and certain amino acids,
Okay.
your liver doesn't just let them float around or excrete them. It initiates an incredibly complex assembly line.
Okay, let's get into that assembly line, because I'm curious, how exactly does a carbohydrate become a fat? Because structurally, they are, like, entirely different molecules.
They are, definitely. But at their core, they share the exact same fundamental building blocks: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Just arranged differently.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So during de novo lipogenesis, the liver takes a glucose molecule and breaks it down through glycolysis into a much smaller compound called pyruvate.
Okay, pyruvate.
And that pyruvate goes into the mitochondria and gets converted into acetyl-CoA, which is it's basically a tiny 2-carbon fragment.
Okay, so it essentially chops the sugar down into these tiny 2-carbon Lego bricks.
That is a perfect way to picture it, Lego bricks. And then, using this enzyme complex called fatty acid synthase, the liver systematically strings those 2-carbon bricks back together,
Just clicking them one by one.
one after another, into a long chain. It essentially sews them up until it has built a brand new, fully functional saturated fatty acid.
That's incredible.
Usually it makes palmitic acid, which is a 16-carbon chain. And from there, the body can elongate it or desaturate it to create whatever specific lipid it needs.
For the cell membranes or the hormones.
Exactly.
So instead of thinking of the body as a car that needs, refined oil poured into the engine to survive, it's actually more like it's an internal alchemy lab.
I love that, an internal alchemy lab.
It literally spins physiological straw, like basic carbs and amino acids, into structural gold.
That is precisely what is happening at the molecular level. You provide the raw base materials, and the liver reconstructs them into the exact fats required to keep your nervous system insulated.
It's mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It is. The necessity of fat is very real, but the source of that fat is entirely negotiable.
Okay, but if our liver is this masterful at molecular reconstruction, I mean, why do we have an entire industry built around essential fats?
Ah, right. The essential fatty acids.
Yeah, because we are constantly bombarded with messaging about omega-3s and omega-6s and how we absolutely must consume them from outside sources because our bodies can't produce them.
It's a huge industry.
So does the alchemy lab have a blind spot? Like, is there something it just can't do?
It does have a very specific biological limit, actually. And this is really the crux of the argument for dietary fat.
Okay, what's the limit?
Well, the human body is remarkably good at building fatty acid chains, like we said, and even adding double bonds to them, but we lack 2 specific enzymes:
Which ones?
delta-12 desaturase and delta-15 desaturase.
Meaning we literally do not have the genetic hardware to create certain chemical bonds.
Correct. We cannot insert a double bond beyond the 9th carbon in a fatty acid chain. And because of that highly specific evolutionary quirk, we cannot synthesize linoleic acid, which is an omega-6, or alpha-linolenic acid, which is an omega-3.
Ah, there they are.
Right. Since our internal lab can't manufacture them, they are classified as essential, meaning they strictly must be obtained from our environment.
Okay, so the paradigm survives a little bit. The machine does need some specific oil from the outside world.
It does. It absolutely does. But the catch is entirely in the volume.
The volume.
Yeah. When we hear the word essential in modern wellness culture, we immediately translate that to mean we need massive, deliberate, optimized doses.
Right, like we need to be chugging olive oil or eating avocados every single day or popping giant fish oil pills.
Exactly. But when you look at the actual physiological baseline required to prevent deficiency, the numbers are just staggeringly small.
Really? How small are we talking?
Research consistently demonstrates that a human being only needs about 1 to 2% of their total caloric intake to come from linoleic acid to prevent any biological deficiency.
Wait, 1 to 2%?
1 to 2%. That's it.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Uh-huh.
Are you saying that if my caloric intake is roughly, say, 2,000 calories a day,
Yeah.
I only need 20 to 40 calories worth of these specific fatty acids to keep the machine running perfectly?
That's the trace reality.
Wow.
The requirement is so incredibly minor that it exists in what we would consider trace quantities in almost every natural food on Earth.
Wait, I really want to push back on this a little bit because it sounds almost too simple.
Sure. Go for it.
If I adopted an extreme diet where I consumed virtually zero intentional fat, like no oils, no nuts, no seeds, no avocados.
Nothing visibly fatty.
Right. Could I really meet my absolute biological requirement for omega-3 and omega-6 just from the hidden incidental trace fats inside a bowl of plain grains or legumes?
Yes. Absolutely.
Seriously?
That is exactly what the physiology reveals. A person consuming what appears to the naked eye as a zero-fat diet of whole plant foods, grains, and legumes is still ingesting lipids.
Because it's in the cellular structure of the plants themselves.
Precisely. The cell membranes of a lentil or a grain of rice contain trace amounts of these essential fatty acids,
I had no idea.
and your digestive tract is highly efficient at extracting them. You would meet that 1 to 2% threshold without ever thinking about it.
That completely flips the script on everything we're taught.
It really does, and this raises an important question, right? Why does society and even a massive sector of the nutritional industry constantly panic about essential fatty acid deficiency?
Yeah, why'd the panic?
If the threshold for a true biological deficit is so incredibly difficult to reach in a natural food environment, why are we obsessed with supplementing it?
Because we've confused biological survival with market optimization.
Oh, yes.
We assume more is better, you know?
Right.
Like, if 20 calories of omega-3 is good, then 400 calories in a massive supplement pill must make my brain work 20 times faster.
We conflate optimal according to an arbitrary modern standard with biologically necessary. We underestimate the sheer efficiency of the body's internal management systems. We think we have to micromanage the input because we just don't trust the internal economy.
Okay, but if our liver is successfully manufacturing the bulk of the fat we need, and we only require these tiny trace amounts from our actual food to hit that essential baseline,
Yeah.
it begs a massive question.
What's that?
What on earth is the point of the pounds of body fat we are already carrying around? Is it just a biological storage unit?
That's the common perception, isn't it?
Yeah, that adipose tissue is just a dusty savings account for a famine that never comes.
Right. But when you look closely at adipose tissue, you realize we have totally misunderstood its role. Adipose tissue is not an inert reserve.
Okay.
It isn't just a warehouse storing excess energy. It is actually a highly metabolically active endocrine organ.
Wait, an organ. So it's actively participating in the system, not just sitting on the sidelines waiting for an emergency.
Very actively. Adipose tissue continuously communicates with the brain, specifically the hypothalamus, via hormones like leptin to regulate your energy expenditure and hunger.
Oh, wow.
It plays a major role in regulating systemic inflammation. It converts and synthesizes certain steroid hormones.
It's doing a lot.
It is. But most importantly for our context today, it is continuously releasing free fatty acids into your bloodstream.
It sounds like body fat isn't a dusty pantry of canned goods waiting for an emergency. It's actually more like an active, buzzing internal stock market.
I love that analogy.
Like it's constantly reading hormonal market signals and liquidating assets like releasing free fatty acids to keep the system running smoothly.
That is exactly what it's doing. It is a buzzing internal stock market. When insulin levels drop and hormones like glucagon or epinephrine rise, your adipose tissue immediately senses that shift.
It's like the traders on the floor yelling to sell.
Right. It hydrolyzes stored triglycerides into free fatty acids and glycerol and dumps them into the bloodstream to feed your muscles and organs.
That's so cool.
Essentially, every living human carrying even a modest amount of body fat is already operating on this sophisticated internal fat economy.
So we're already doing it.
Exactly. It can supplement your dietary intake, and under certain conditions, it can completely supplant it.
And the text brings up a fascinating real-world arena where we see this internal economy take full control, right? Extended fasting traditions.
Yes. Across diverse cultures and contemplative lineages, you see well-documented practices of extended fasting, sometimes stretching for weeks at a time.
Weeks without food.
Right. Now, if the input equals output machine metaphor were true, these people would rapidly degrade and die.
They break down instantly.
But they don't. They don't just physically survive the absolute deprivation of external fat and calories. The practitioners frequently report physical thriving.
Really. Thriving.
Yeah, unusual mental clarity, massive sensory refinement, and a feeling of energetic expansion.
Which makes zero sense if you view the body as an engine. I mean, if a car runs out of oil, the dashboard doesn't suddenly glow brighter, and the engine doesn't experience sensory refinement.
No, it catches on fire.
Exactly. It catches on fire and stops.
Right, because a machine degrades when its external fuel is cut. But a self-organizing biological system adapts.
The generative system.
Exactly. When deprived of external input, the body reorganizes its chemistry. It shifts away from glycolysis and moves heavily into ketogenesis.
Ah, ketones.
Yeah. The liver takes those free fatty acids released by our high-frequency trader, the adipose tissue, and converts them into ketone bodies.
And ketones are incredibly efficient fuel, right? Like almost like a super fuel.
Highly efficient, especially for the brain. Ketones actually yield more ATP, more cellular energy per mole of oxygen consumed than glucose does.
Oh, wow.
So that reported mental clarity and sensory refinement during a fast isn't just subjective mysticism. It is a physiological reality of a brain running on a highly stable, internally generated superfuel.
So the body just reorganizes its chemistry and becomes efficient in a completely different register.
Exactly. It just shifts gears.
Okay, this is all brilliantly elegant biology, but it brings up a glaring, everyday contradiction for me.
Let's hear it.
If our bodies are this incredibly self-sufficient, if we have a liver acting as an alchemy lab and adipose stock market trading energy, and we only need trace, microscopic amounts of essential fats to survive,
Yeah.
why do we crave fat so intensely?
Ah.
Because when I want a rich, heavy, fatty meal, it does not feel like an arbitrary thought. It feels like a deep, primal biological alarm going off.
That is the perfect question to bridge us from the cold, hard physiology of lipid metabolism into the very messy psychology of human eating.
It is messy, isn't it?
Extremely. Because mainstream nutritional science, heavily influenced by that mechanistic metaphor, assumes that a craving is a literal one-to-one reflection of a cellular deficit.
Like the gas tank is low, so the warning light turns on.
The depleting system model, exactly. But living, self-regulating systems are not just adding and subtracting molecules. They are highly context-sensitive.
Okay.
And this is where we need to look at somatic wisdom traditions. The idea that the physical sensations in our body hold profound intelligence.
But how does somatic wisdom square with wanting to eat a massive plate of heavy, greasy food?
Okay.
I mean, is my body being wise when it wants French fries?
Well, we have to differentiate between a true biological necessity and a deeply ingrained neurological reward pathway.
Okay, that makes sense.
When we examine the intense sensation of craving fat, we have to look at the actual mechanics of the craving. Fat provides incredible mouthfeel.
It really does.
It coats the palate. It triggers a massive release of dopamine and endorphins in the brain.
So it's an evolutionary reward system getting hijacked.
Yes, exactly. The article suggests this is often about emotional regulation or sensory comfort rather than true biological deficiency. The text frames this beautifully, actually. It says the body is reaching for richness.
Oh, wow. Reaching for richness. That's a great phrase.
Isn't it? That reaching, that intense sensation you feel in your chest or your stomach is very real. But what your body is actually reaching for might be something entirely other than a literal lipid molecule for a cell membrane.
Right. It's not like my body is saying, I need palmitic acid.
Exactly. It might be reaching for physiological grounding. It might be reaching for emotional regulation. It's seeking a shift in state, a sense of comfort or satiety that you have unconsciously learned to associate with dense, rich foods.
So when we feel that deep primal urge for something rich and fatty, how do we distinguish between our biology sounding a genuine alarm versus our brains just seeking a familiar emotional pacifier?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it requires a lot of honest self-inquiry. And just to be absolutely clear here, questioning the absolute necessity of dietary fat is not about calling fat harmful.
Right.
It certainly isn't about claiming that avoiding fat makes someone virtuous or more disciplined.
Absolutely. We are definitely not engaging in dietary dogma here. We're just analyzing the mechanics of human metabolism.
Exactly. What this exploration is really about is recognizing how deeply we have accepted an industrial food model as the baseline for biological truth.
Say more about that.
Well, we've been told for decades by agricultural boards and supplement companies that we must constantly consume, constantly replace, and constantly optimize specific macronutrients just to stave off biological failure.
Because an active, self-sufficient biology doesn't require a lot of expensive products.
Bingo. When you look closely at the reality of de novo lipogenesis, the microscopic trace reality of essential fats, and the highly active endocrine intelligence of adipose tissue,
You realize the body is just extraordinarily adaptive.
it's a system that can extract profound structural nutrition from seemingly impoverished, simple inputs. It can endure and even thrive in conditions that would instantly destroy any rigid mechanical system we've ever engineered.
So what does this all mean? For you listening, we really want to reiterate that this deep dive is not dietary advice. Please don't go and radically alter your food intake just based on this conversation.
No, please don't. Consult a professional for that.
Right. But what this text offers is a massive liberating lens shift for how you view your own body.
It really is liberating.
You are not a fragile, rigid machine constantly teetering on the verge of breakdown if you fail to hit the perfect industrially defined macronutrient ratios.
Hmm.
You are walking around in a masterpiece of biological
A
adaptability.
masterpiece. I love that.
Your body can dynamically reorganize its internal chemistry. It can literally spin carbohydrates into structural fat, and it can sustain itself through an incredibly complex, elegant internal economy.
It's a miracle of nature, really.
It is. So this is an invitation to trust your body's open-ended adaptability, rather than stressing over a mechanistic checklist of daily dietary requirements.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own today, building directly on that idea of incredible biological resilience.
Ooh, leave us with something good.
Well, if our bodies possess this ancient, remarkable capacity to reorganize their internal chemistry around radically simple or even impoverished inputs,
Yeah.
could our modern obsession with constantly optimizing and oversupplying every single nutrient actually be blunting our body's natural machinery for self-repair and adaptation?
Oh, wow.
Are we inadvertently denying our internal systems the opportunity to flex the very metabolic mechanisms that kept our ancestors alive and thriving?
That is such a fascinating question to chew on. Are we rusting our own internal machinery by never letting it actually do the work?
It's definitely something to think about.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope you take these new perspectives out into the world, and maybe the next time you look at a car engine, you'll feel a little more appreciation for the profound, self-generating magic that is your own biology. Stay curious, and we'll catch you next time.